Today we're diving into internalized transphobia. And I feel like I thought that not that many people had it, or I knew trans people had it, but I didn't know that basically everyone has it, at least to some degree.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
So we're going to dive into it today, what it is, how it shows up in life, and how you can deal with it. And of course, we're not professionals or anything. We're not, super educated on the subject or anything. We're just going to talk about what we know, our experience with it, and from some reading we've done online, basically.
Yes.
So let's get into it.
Yeah.
Tell me how much you love me. Tell me you'll never doubt me. Tell me how much I changed your life. Say you can't live without me. Tell me.
There is a lot to be said about this topic. So why don't we start with what it is?
I feel like from now that I read more about it, and I have a lot of notes about this. I took a lot of notes. I don't know how I'm going to go through it all, but we'll do it somehow. But from what I thought it was, it's on the lines of what I thought it was, but it's not exactly what I thought it was.
Okay. Why don't we talk about that?
Yes. So basically, because we talked about it in the last episode,
Yeah.
and that's why I wanted to make a full episode about this subject, since it's a bigger subject. There's a lot to say. And from what I've experienced with it, and like I said, from what I thought, is that it's mostly you hating parts about your transness within yourself, like hating on your transness and seeing yourself as less of a man in my case.
Right.
But I didn't know that it was also about what you think about other trans people.
Yeah.
The entire community.
For sure. There's a lot of layers to it, right? So there's, like you said, like things that you think about yourself and things that affect you and like how you feel about your transness, how you feel about yourself as well. But then there is that entire different layer as well, where it shows up in how you think about other people who are also trans and what you might think about other people's identities. And when you start trying to discuss whether or not this person or the next person is valid or not. And like, there's so many layers to it, right? There's so many things where it shows up, but you might not even be aware that it's internalized transphobia.
Yes.
But I feel like it is a really important topic to talk about in the community because it shows up in everyone.
Yeah.
People who are new to transitioning and people who have been doing it for decades. It's always there. And it's always something that needs to be continuously talked about because it affects how we see other people. It affects how we treat other people. And our actions and our words, and trans people have a bit of, in my opinion, a bit of a duty to each other to also not inflict these ideals and these thoughts that we have about ourselves, for example, onto other people, which is a common thing that happens in the trans community.
Yeah. And
so
just being more aware about it definitely will like affect your quality of life and just the way you express yourself and just your gender identity and how you want to live your life freely.
For sure.
From the norms of society, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And at least I've written down some different areas where it might show up, kind of. So I have a lot of things to say about the topic. I think you have not dived as much into it as maybe I have previously, because to me it's a very interesting topic because it dives into a lot of queer theory as well, dives into a lot of systems of oppression at play at the same time within this topic as well. And also one thing that I'm going to be very like adamant when we talk about this topic is to also remind people that these things can go up and down, right? So there will be times maybe where you don't feel the way you do about trans people, and then it might change as you progress in your transition and so on and so forth. And I just kind of want to challenge those thoughts and those ideals a little bit. So yeah, I think maybe,
your phone buzzing?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
Put that on silent.
I just did. What about
you
that?
people listening, Put your phone on silent.
Well, don't turn off the sound. You want to listen to what we have to say,
Yes, that is true.
but no notifications. Anyway, how about we start with some of your notes? Because I'm very curious to see what you have to say about the topic.
Well, first of all, I just wrote like what kind of describing what it is basically, and that it shows up in other minorities as well, like people who have like internalized racism or even like body image, stuff like that, which I didn't really think that much about because obviously I'm in the trans bubble, so I hear all about internalized transphobia and this and that.
Yeah.
But then it's really common that just a lot of different people have it, even though they're not trans, because of society and the way that society is built, that based on the norms that exist, it's hard not to internalize some of the shit that's out there, basically.
For sure. For sure. I
Like-
feel like it's also getting a little bit worse right now because there's so much exposure around
Yeah.
trans people right now that
Yeah, for sure.
everybody has a thought, everyone has an opinion. And it is sometimes hard to not also take that into consideration as a trans person also.
Yes, even though I think a lot of us are very aware of it and we're like, the things that we see on social media or just media in general, we're like aware that these things are not true, these things are stupid, people are just being transphobic, but unconsciously we're absorbing it,
Yeah.
and the things that you might be telling yourself are coming from these places
Yeah.
and from other people's opinions. Believing some of the negative things about trans people is true about yourself. And our brains are programmed in binary ways, so it can be hard to get rid of. And the deeper the internalization is, the harder it is to like work on and get rid of it. Even though I don't know if it's possible to like completely get rid of it ever, but some people have more, some people have less, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, it's so systematic and embedded in our world that it's almost impossible to like ignore it or to not absorb some of the shit. Things that are meant to oppress minority groups are seldom true. Those are not the words I typically use in a sentence.
Right.
But yes.
I mean, essentially, it could be, for example, let's do an example just to kind of provide some information on what it might look like in a
Yes.
concrete example. This could be, let's say, you hear a negative stereotype about what trans people are according to some Republican ass bitch. I don't know. That could be like somebody saying that trans people are always bricky and you can always tell, for example.
I don't know if it's as current, but I remember a couple of years ago, there was a thing for trans men that everyone wanted to avoid the trans man voice. That like when you start T and your voice gets deeper, when you grow up as a woman, you learn how to speak in a certain way, and then you still have that, but then your voice gets deeper because your voice didn't get deep slowly like it does for cis men, where you get to adjust to it. It gets deep very fast. So then you still speak in a higher pitch, kind of.
Right.
Even though your
okay.
voice is deep.
Right.
And people thought that was less masculine, or that cis people knew that you were trans because you had that voice.
Right. So then you would like beat yourself up
Yes, so
over.
then trans men would want to get rid of it and had like dysphoria about it and saw themselves as less manly and disgust about it and like try to work around it, and they would never have that.
thought process.
Yes.
And maybe also they end up, being on other people about those things because they themselves feel bad about them might having that issue.
Exactly.
And
Like
that's
you could
also
judge a trans man could judge another trans man for speaking that way and comment about it because he in reality is insecure about his own voice maybe, or he has internalized transphobia, so that's why he thinks that about other trans people,
yeah.
because that's what transphobic people think.
Yeah, for sure. And like we said, like this can really lead to some very like hateful and negative rhetoric, even amongst trans people, towards other people who are also trans. And especially if it's like things that you don't enjoy about yourself, or like things that you've internalized over time. And then you start looking for those signs in other trans people. Like I know for example, a lot of the dolls who have had a lot of surgery, they can look at other people who are not as far along in their transition and be like, oh, you're so bricky, or like, oh, you're not on my level, babe. So we're both trans people at the end of the day. And that's something I've been seeing a lot from like older trans people lately who have like had more time to transition, for example, who kind of, you know, when other people kind of say something against that, they kind of get frustrated. Whereas it also does, like, transitioning looks very different now than what it might have done for them. But they still feel a lot of this, like, ooh, you can't do that, you're going to get clocked, or that's not safe. Because I think that's where a lot of, like, old transitioning thought process come from, of, like, passing so that nobody knows, and so that you can live stealth, and so that society's not going to kill you, because that's the thought process, for example. However, today it might look completely different, because some people are not necessarily inherently shameful about being trans and don't necessarily care about passing or blending in the same way. So then people who have lived that stealth life before might feel a little bit frustrated over that, and can get like be a bit hurtful towards those other people who don't care in the same way that they did. There are like a lot of different areas of life and like different aspects of life that internalized transphobia will hit, and where you'll notice it. I wrote down a few different areas that I find like are kind of the most fundamental to me, where it's like your thoughts and your internalized thoughts about being trans and transness can both hurt yourself and hurt other people. And the way how you go about like communicating with other trans people. So the first one that I want to bring up is kind of like this whole aspect of not being trans enough, right? There's a lot of thoughts there that are like, even before you come to terms with being trans, that kind of can deter you from transitioning, for example. There are things that like society will tell you about trans people that are just flat out not true, that end up setting a lot of us back in our journeys. Because I remember for me, for example, I had the thought that the only way to be valid as a trans person was feeling extreme gender dysphoria from the age of like 4 years old.
Okay, because I was just about to ask, like, okay, what does that mean if you think that you're not trans enough? Or like, what does trans enough mean in that case? So then it's like, if you have dysphoria, or you have to look a certain way, you have to be a certain way. Yes,
exactly. So, you know, not everyone is the same. Not everyone has an insane amount of dysphoria from a very young age. Not everybody understands their identity from day one. Whereas a lot of people, when they talk about trans people, they only want to talk about those people who have like known since they were teeny tiny. And that is just not realistic. I mean, there's so much misinformation when it comes to that. Like, there's so many different ways of being trans, right? And understanding your own identity, it takes time. And I know for myself, for example, I had a lot of these thoughts and feelings at the beginning of my transition, because I very much was like, oh, am I trans enough? Or, oh, but I should feel this way, or I should feel that way 100% of the time, every single second of every single day. And that, I remember how much anxiety, how much stress that gave me in the beginning of my transition, because I would question every single move I made.
Yes.
And
like,
it's tiring.
I kind of still like wearing makeup. Does that mean I'm not trans in that case?
Exactly.
Like,
or for example, for me, like, I don't always want to wear a teeny tiny mini dress if I'm going to work. Does that make me less trans? No. Women also don't like women also don't do that, for example. It's not like exactly. So it's like there are small things like that that have a big impact, and I feel like that's where these kind of things can show up quite clearly. Yes, of course, there's a level of like, there are certain things you might need to like think about and feel out. And sometimes it is just a thought and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're trans. But in a lot of cases, you might be, but you're kind of hindering yourself from acknowledging it and accepting it as well. Because you think that
the lights went out.
So yeah, so anyway.
Now the light is
Moving on.
completely changed.
It is what it is. It's fine. So, no, but so in that area, like it can really affect that. And also that can also be a way of like looking at other people and like, oh, is that person trans enough to call themselves trans?
We're like, I don't really think that person is trans because they don't do this or that, or they express themselves this way.
Exactly. And that could be like, you start nitpicking, okay, does this person not talk every day?
Yeah.
Bitch, who gives a flying fuck at the end of the day? You know what I mean? But that's how people see it. So I really I urge people to question their own biases when it comes to this.
Yeah, for sure.
To a degree, I understand that like there's a level of like safety and all of these things and so on and so forth. But internalized internalized transphobia. That's another topic. Internalized transphobia is not doing anybody any good. It's not doing our community good, and it's definitely not like we should stop trying to appeal as much to cis people as we sometimes as community tend to do.
Yeah. It's really hard.
It is.
Another example that I read or saw was a trans woman talking about how she was looking for a job. She was going to an interview and there were cis women there who also had the interview. And then she felt like, oh, if I get the job, I feel like I'm taking this opportunity from these cis women because they have lived their whole lives as women, so they might have had to fight harder to get here. So then maybe I shouldn't take their job. But then that means that she would see herself as a man in that situation because that's how society views her. Right. So then that thought process is just transphobic to herself.
Yeah. No, that's a thing. And, that kind of like coincides, like those kind of thought patterns are kind of also like what is sometimes, it can tend to hold us back a little bit because we're kind of subconsciously agreeing with these right-wing conservative individuals who see us for something that we're completely not, and it kind of just also disregards like a lot of research done over the past years as well, and like it's unfortunate to see, but I understand why it ends up being there because people keep repeating the fact that like, oh, trans women are running over cis women in sports or trans women are this and that and taking space, and leave it to men to find their way into women's spaces when talking about trans women in bathrooms and so on, when that's just obviously not the case. Yeah, but it's a very layered topic, of course, but I think it's unfortunate because then you are kind of ending up agreeing with these conservatives who have no idea what they're talking about. They're just spewing hate and spewing information that's not true.
But the one thing that I've been conflicted about or confused is how to separate dysphoria from internalized transphobia. Because if I'm dysphoric about my hips, for example, and that means in my head I'm like, oh, I have more fat around my hips than a cis man, so that makes me less of a man, or that I look like a woman, I can think to myself, or like I have the curves of a woman, and then I get dysphoric, right? But then those thoughts are like transphobic. That's internalized transphobia. Right?
But I don't know if I agree. I think it's a fine line. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, that's what I've been thinking.
Yeah.
But it's also, I've been thinking about, okay, if I see another trans guy like that, I'm not gonna think that he's less of a man. But when it comes to myself,
Right. I think that might be a good way of seeing it too, though. Like if you have something that you feel dysphoric about, I mean, dysphoria is a big part of being trans.
yeah,
Or like, I'm not saying that you have to be dysphoric to be trans. I just mean like a lot of, obviously a huge amount of people who are trans experience a high level of dysphoria, right? And of course, there are things that are going to give us dysphoria that are just fundamentally connected to how society sees men and women biologically, from a biological standpoint.
yeah,
Right. And that in itself, you having thoughts about like, okay, damn, I feel like my hips are ginormous. Whatever. Like if that were the case, like I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
That in itself to me is not really the same as internalized transphobia. Like when I think of internalized transphobia would be, for example, in that scenario, being a little bit more so focused on how can you abolish that, like that becomes your one thought process of like, okay, if I don't somehow mysteriously change this about myself, I'm not a real trans person. Or if you look at another trans man and you see it and you're like, ooh, that's rough. Like maybe you should work on that. Like that's to me when it starts going into more internalized transphobia territory.
okay,
Do you get what I mean?
yes. But I feel like you can still have internalized transphobia without necessarily thinking about other people.
Oh, for
that
sure.
much.
Yeah. But I
also
mean more
then in my head, if I'm like, oh, I don't want to change in the locker room because of my hips, and I see the other guys and I'm like, they have the shape of a real man, but I don't. If I think to myself that.
Yeah, I mean that can also borderline on it.
Okay. So it's like,
It is tough. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of scenarios where it's like inherently they overlap a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And having internalized transphobia doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad person. Do you get what I mean? Like that doesn't inherently mean that there's something that you're doing that's fucked up or your thought process is completely fucked up. It's just there are things that will be a little bit of an overlap as well.
Yeah.
I think it's like learning how to deal with it is also what's important, right?
for sure.
And not placing the same ideals and the same thought process onto other people. That's where I find it be very important to like figure out for
Yeah.
yourself. You know what I mean?
I think it matters a lot which communities you're in, the content you watch, your surroundings. It affects a lot how you think about trans people, and it can be even be other trans communities that you surround yourself with, or what's it called,
For
with
sure.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like, I know there's this thing, right? In ballroom, for example, I'm just going to use that as an example, but there are a lot of thoughts and expectations and things placed onto femme queens, for example, right? The femme queen category, for the people who don't know, is basically a trans woman with ballroom experience. Usually there's a quite like connected aesthetic to being a femme queen in ballroom, right? When you think of a femme queen, you think of people like Sanaya. Sanaya is kind of a goddess in ballroom. Like she is fundamentally a femme queen. What I mean by that is she's so in tuned and has also like been the blueprint and kind of like shaped what a femme queen aesthetic and what a femme queen is in ballroom to a large degree. And by that, I mean like the surged look, big titties,
Yeah.
like hourglass figure, like all of that. And I know a lot of people in ballroom connect that to being, first of all, both passing, and also connect that to being like being a femme queen and being trans. Kind of. So sometimes a lot of ballroom elders or more conservative people in ballroom have a tendency to place, for example, like say to people who are still femme queens, but maybe a little bit more like chill in their expression and maybe have not had as much surgery or have not been on hormones for 10 years and can kind of be like, well, you're not really a femme queen.
Yeah.
And I can understand that, like, that is also a very layered discussion. However, it can kind of turn into this like, ooh, like, you're not what I am.
Yeah.
And therefore you're not really valid in the same way. Or like, I don't see you as a full-blown woman yet.
Yes.
And that comes from a lot of years of trauma from society as well. At least from what I like, in my opinion, at least. And it can kind of turn into this, you're a brick kind of mentality, and kind of like they start like nitpicking other people's expression and other people's bodies. And that to me kind of turns into like, ooh, this is getting
when it's coming
hurtful.
from your own community.
Exactly.
But it always starts with society.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate because there's just there are layers to it. Of course, there's safety involved when we talk about society and passing and so on. Like, society is getting rough.
Yeah.
But I just think it's unfortunate because it places a lot of hurt and places a lot of unnecessary, like, spiraling thoughts into younger people who are trans, for example.
Yeah, for
who
sure.
then also take on those thoughts and pass it down. It becomes a never-ending spiral of brick this, brick that. Which is not helping anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't love that.
I feel like that's also common in other like trans communities, or just like I said, people you just follow online. Maybe they are a bit like that.
Yeah,
without you realizing.
Exactly.
You know?
So to me, it kind of ties into this, right?
Okay.
So I have 2 points that kind of go into this as well, that I feel like are a little bit like kind of in the same stratosphere. So it's about like policing other trans people. So judging people who don't pass or who are visibly gender non-conforming.
Yeah.
Also like distancing yourself from certain identities, for example, non-binary people, to feel more acceptable. That in turn also goes into like respectability politics when it comes to transness. By that I mean like believing that trans people must be palatable to other people to deserve rights, and also sacrificing more marginalized trans people for broader social approval. There's this one trans girl. I hate her.
Oh.
No, she is such a grifter. Like she's so conservative. Wait, because whenever I see her, I just tune out. Like I can't listen because there's so much internalized transphobia. She basically calls herself a man, you know.
Yeah.
Just kind of like telling other people
She is
like
internalized transphobia.
she is. Right, Blair White.
Yeah.
There we go. What the fuck is wrong with that? No, every time I see her content, I'm just like, wow, you hate yourself so much.
Yeah.
And you leech that kind of thought process onto other people. And I think it's so unfair and unjust because, girl, if you did not have the access to transition the way you did, and if you did not, for example, look the way you did, you would never have the thought process and opinions about trans people that you have. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Because when I look at her, I see somebody who's been able to transition into a gorgeous woman. Like she's stunning. She is. But she is the kind of person who will say to a non-binary person, like, you are not valid. Or you and me are not the same. And she equates value in different ways than I think is respectable. And she's very much like, she panders to the right. Like she panders to conservatives and believes that like by her being also like critiquing transness or critiquing the community, that will win her points in conservative eyes or something. And that to me is ridiculous because they're always going to hate you. Sorry to say it.
Yeah.
That's not going to change. What you're doing, however, is screwing over other people's ability to access healthcare. You're screwing over other people's ability to fight back as trans people. And that to me is ridiculous. And that's a typical example of like being fed so many
Yeah.
wild opinions over the time that you've been transitioning. A lot of people who transition earlier in their lives, like or like some time back, end up having that rhetoric.
Yeah.
And
That's like severe internalized transphobia.
yeah, but then the problem is that they then turn it on to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing with Jeffree Star. It's same kind of bullshit. Like Jeffree Star looks like a fucking woman, but to him now, fuck these trans people,
Yeah.
fuck this, fuck that. Huh? You look like that and you're saying all of that? I think you were like, the internalized transphobia is right there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not that like Jeffree doesn't identify as trans, so doesn't apply in the same way. But however, it kind of does. You know what I mean? But it's like a lot of binary trans people look at non-binary people
Yeah.
and have very whack, weird opinions,
Yes.
like as if their existence is somehow like attack on binary trans people. Like it doesn't make sense to me.
No. They just think a lot of people are they also want to be free in their expression, but they're scared and they've absorbed so many societal norms that they don't feel like they can do that, and then they hate on other people who are free in their gender expression.
Yeah. And to me, you know what it gives? To me, it really is the same thing as like super quote unquote mask gay men
Yeah.
who end up hating on feminine gay men. Like, first of all, those people would not have the rights that they have today without trans people, first of all. And second of all, without femininity driving the way in the argument of rights.
Maybe they want to be a little bit feminine too.
Maybe they do. I mean, and a lot of them are secretly.
Yeah.
But they don't want to admit it because they've internalized so much of like what society expects them to be.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just kind of the same shit. Like somebody walking around with, let's take a stereotypical example. Somebody walking around with blue hair, a barista with they them pronouns working at Starbucks is not affecting your rights as a trans person. It's not putting binary trans people whose only wish is to pass and to not have to think about their transness at a disadvantage. If anything, they are normalizing transness and showing it more to the public than maybe somebody who is extremely passing is. And that in turn, we know this, right? We know the fact that exposure and representation drives change in society. But people don't seem to process that.
Yeah.
And I just find that funny. I find that very interesting because it's like I said, it's kind of the same thing as these mask for mask guys who are like, and they're the same kind of guys who are like, oh yeah, I don't want to fuck all that gay shit.
Yeah. Like,
Babes, we're the
what
same
fuck?
community. Like it's the same community. What are you on about? So yeah, that kind of internalized transphobia drives me crazy. And you can think what you want about other people and their aesthetics and whatever they're doing. That's fine. Like everyone has the right to an opinion, but not every opinion needs to be shared to other people.
Yeah, and it's also, if you have these opinions about other people, you should think to yourself, why?
Exactly. Where's it coming from?
Why is someone else expression or just the way they look or just what they're doing, why is it bothering me so much? That
Exactly.
you mean something within yourself. It's a mirror.
Because then you'd end up being no better than cis people who look at trans people and automatically just because they're trans think that they're trash.
Yeah. And it's the same with yourself. Like if you look in the mirror, look at yourself and think these things, you might not realize it. You might think, yeah, it's just dysphoria or it's this and that. Or like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, maybe I would want to be more feminine, but I haven't dared to. But I don't know because I feel like I'm myself, but maybe there are things that I've not wanted to try because of society or because of what people would think because I am a man.
Yeah.
Or a trans man.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting about that, for example, is that there are a lot of things, for example, that are treated differently, right? So femininity, regardless of who it is, regardless of anything, femininity is always going to be critiqued more than masculinity, right?
Yeah.
So men, regardless of if they're cis or trans or whatnot, doing anything feminine will always inherently in society be seen as something worse
Yeah.
than if they were doing something masculine. And that's why I think it's so common amongst like trans men, for example, to not want to show any kind of femininity because they've been critiqued for it before, you know, or like, but then that does become in part like internalized transphobia towards yourself. And who wants to be limited by what other people think? But another aspect where it can really affect people, especially trans people, I feel is in the dating and like desirability aspect of life. You know what I mean? There's so many times where this is one of the things where I think I have the most internalized transphobia within myself. Like I have such a tendency, or I've had at least a big tendency to kind of put myself down, or at least feel a lot more affected by being trans and dating and kind of like feeling desirable and feeling lovable kind of. And like, I haven't always seen myself as somebody who deserves love because of being trans kind of, when that's such a stupid thing to feel. But I think it's quite common. And I know a lot of other trans people feel the same way. A lot of which has to do with how other people have treated us, but it is hard to not take that to heart.
Yeah.
So I know many times where I'm texting somebody and I kind of almost like subconsciously push them away because of that, because of other things too, but partly because of the transness, where I'm kind of like, oh, would you really date me? Or I start asking questions like, oh, would you be okay with being seen with me?
Yeah.
Because I myself maybe might feel a type of way. It starts to dig into my own identity kind of. And like, it's sometimes hard to see yourself as not like a gay couple and rather a straight couple, for example. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So that part can be a lot to deal with.
Yeah, I get that.
And I think a lot of trans people can relate to that.
Yeah, it's a big indicator.
Yes. And that, you know, that comes with what other people also say, like, oh, y'all are just a gay couple, for example, because they see trans women as men, for example.
Yeah.
Then it's like, no, that's literally not the case. But it sometimes can be like, it can hit you in different moments where you think of it that way.
Yeah.
When that's just stupid. But it's hard not to. It's hard not to get sucked up into it. But so let's talk a little bit about like how you can deal with that and how you can like question it and what you can do about it.
Let's wrap up the episode with that.
Yeah.
Because like, okay, now we have all this information. Now what the fuck do I do?
Yeah.
Basically. And so the first like steps is just, okay, acknowledging it, realizing when you are having these thoughts and when you are feeding yourself these things about yourself, or even realizing when you're thinking these things about other people, or when other people are saying something, or maybe you're hanging out with friends and they start saying something, and then just being more aware does a lot. Like I've already started thinking more about it the past like days, and I'm like, damn, I do a lot of this, at least to myself. What would you say about that?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like the thing is, it's like, it is so sometimes hard to look at yourself and what you're doing to yourself and to other people in life, right? It can be such a hard topic to actually take a look at yourself and realize like, oh, damn, I actually do have some biases that I'm not aware of.
And it's also important to know that it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you are actually transphobic at heart. It just means that, you know, society is built this way and it's hard not to absorb some of it. Like, and then it's just really normal. It's something that a lot of trans people have and that we can work with.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, or we don't want to feel guilty, even though it's easy to feel guilty, especially if you're having thoughts like this about other people.
And also like it really is just super important to face it, to not be afraid of actually being in those uncomfortable feelings as well, and kind of like actually wanting to dissect like, where is that thought process coming from? Why do I feel that way? how can I change it? To me, one of the most important things, and why I always love hearing different people's opinions, and why I love hearing conversations about the topic, is you're going to get so many different perspectives listening from people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different ages, different gender expressions. Like everything helps you diversify your own mind. And when you have a different perspective on different things, it is easier to kind of see it, acknowledge it, understand it, and then take the necessary small steps of like, okay, well, maybe that person thinks that way because of this. And that makes it easier to also face your own feeling about it and being like, okay, but if that person's that way, I don't necessarily need to be the same way because that's not my background or that's not how I necessarily feel about it.
Yeah.
And if you see, let's say, for example, you're having deep conversation with somebody who's very binary trans and you start seeing like these little things, you can be like, okay, well, I don't agree. Just because I respect this person does not mean I have to take on those thoughts and those feelings about myself, for example. And I actually think that there are other ways to go about it. So maybe like there's a level of having to trust yourself also in the process and just being open.
If it's thoughts about yourself, it can be hard to be like, oh, what do I actually feel? Because then it can be a lot of hate towards yourself.
Yeah.
So then even though it's hard, try replacing the thought with something positive instead. And there might be resistance. There might be, I don't truly believe this. With time, that's going to become more automatic.
For sure.
And you're going to get more and more used to it, and you're going to start believing it because these other shit that we believe is not true.
Yeah. Because, for example, I think a good example is we were talking about it recently in an episode where you said that you felt that if you're too nice, that makes you, or like that you get dysphoric from that. And I immediately told you, I was like, that's wild. Like that's not necessarily a good thought process. So sometimes it can also be like clocking your friends or like telling them like, hey, I noticed that you feel this. Have you thought about why you feel that way?
Yeah.
And kind of challenging those things. And sometimes it's good also talking about your own feelings in different scenarios and your dysphoria to other people, because then maybe in a safe space, at least, they can also tell you like, hey, maybe that's something that you could work on.
Yeah.
And
talk about it with your friends if you have trans friends.
Yeah.
Or just in general.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, like you can still be a nice man.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
Like I'm just using that as an example, but you get what I mean.
Yeah. In that case, if I had that thought again, I'd be like, but actually, I want to be a kind man. There's nothing wrong with being kind to people and just being nice and not monotone all the time.
And that has no reflection on your transness.
Or my gender, or like the fact that I'm a man. So
yeah.
Also like journal, talk to a therapist can definitely help too. To just like get it out there and get it on paper.
Get it on paper.
Talk to a professional if it's like really, really bothering you.
Yeah.
And if you can afford it.
For sure. But I think it's a great start, like just listening to...
Listen to your heart.
No, but like just listening to a podcast episode like this where we actually dive into
just listen to this episode like 10 times and like give us 5 stars and comment, that's definitely gonna help.
No, but you get what I mean, like just starting to tackle the issue and starting to listen about it and actually kind of having it more in your thoughts. That's a lot.
Yeah,
I do think so.
Yeah,
for me that was also ballroom and being around other people who are like who also have trans identities and being around different thought processes and different ideas, like that widened my view on it a lot.
It's going to be good for yourself and for the community.
Exactly.
Should we wrap it up here?
We shall wrap it up.
I'm so fucking tired.
Yeah.
I also feel like sometimes when we have these serious conversations, I'm like, I get so tired in my head because it takes a lot for me.
Right.
Also because it's hard for me to choose the words to say because I feel like these subjects, you have to choose more complicated words. I don't have the vocabulary because English is not my first language. So I'm struggling to like find the words to say what I want to say.
I get you.
So apologies if I've been less talkative, but yeah.
Yeah. I just like to talk, so
Yeah.
I don't mind.
For me, I just have to think so much every time.
But it's good. So, anyway, let us know what your thoughts are. Do you have any biases that you might be reconsidering after this episode? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share if you want.
I will
And-
hopefully see you in the next video.
Yes,
or
we love you.
episode. Love you. Bye.